and KDW.com, broadcasting from the Bishop West Real Estate Mobile Tower right here in sunny, not sunny, I should say, Northport, Florida. This is John Rawlings with Remax Palm Realty and WKDW Radio, and I hope that I didn't just lose my guest, but we're going to find out here in a second. There she comes back on. Hello. So go ahead and introduce yourself real quick.
Well, hi, John. And again, thanks. My name is Joy, and I work at the Center for Abuse and Rape Emergencies in Charlotte County. John has us every month talking about different topics that affect you and affect your friends and affect all of us because we all live here in Charlotte. And we're going to be talking a little bit today about that community again. John, glad to be here.
Hey, thank you so much, Joy. And we're going to get this new format down for you the next time through. I hope you enjoy it. It's going to be really nice the next time you come on. Just a nice reminder for people who are going to be a guest on the show is that we can do pop-up advertising or pop-up informational, like a PDF file. If you send that over, we can pop those up as we're talking about subjects. We can actually put a PDF up, such as the circle. So, hey, Corey, how you doing, buddy? So,
the question, I guess I'm supposed to say hello.
What's that?
It said, hell, John.
Did I didn't even read it that fast. I saw Corey. Hello, there he is. So the nice thing is if anybody has any questions along the way or comments along the way, you're going to see them at the bottom of the screen. So people who are watching.
This is what we've been wanting to get the feedback.
So anybody that's out there watching, like Corey, keep it coming and listen to the show. And I'm going to go ahead and throw it back to Joy real quick and let her talk a little bit about the topic at hand today.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you. And I am talking today about sexual assault response teams. Anyone who might have followed the show for the last couple of months might remember we talked about fatality review teams. John, you remember? And domestic violence.
Yes.
Well, this is kind of the dual center, the other side of the coin as far as the communication and the collaboration and the multidisciplinary team that has to come together to help us attack sexual violence and sexual assaults in our community. Of course, C.A.R.E is there, our advocates are there. And just to give you a little short brief, the Rape Crisis Center started in the 70s. Well, the sexual assault response team, it used to be a bunch of women sitting around a kitchen table, literally. Okay.
Right.
So we've come a long way. We're pleased to have lieutenants from the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office, to have Department of Corrections with us, Charlotte Behavioral Health Care, the hospitals, Bayfront, Punta Gorda Police Department, the Bureau of Crime Compensation, the Office of the Attorney General, everybody. And I hope someone saw Officer Marone. He talked about programs in the jail being just a piece of the puzzle. And I love that. I told him I was going to steal his analogy because this is what the C.A.R.E does. It looks at extensive data, statistics, incidents, historical data, and where is the gap? Where did we fall through? Where did a victim have to sit in the hospital for 10 hours to get an exam completed? Where did we have wrong information on a report? Where did we not have enough evidence to move forward? That kind of stuff. And that team meets on a monthly basis. We are lucky to have our sexual assault program manager, Wendy Silva, as the co-chair with an assistant state attorney, Stephanie Powers, who is the other side. So we bring law enforcement, advocates, first responders. I asked her before she comes on in a little bit who was missing on the team. And she said, definitely emergency medical services, first responders.
Right.
They're definitely missing from the equation. Maybe some of the pregnancy centers, it would be helpful if they were in the equation. Of course, that's going to be way after the fact, but still, there's something we missed somewhere, John, what did you know or not know about that? Oops, you're going.
I'll be right back.
Okay, I can keep talking.
I knew that was going to happen because I didn't silence my phone. But the whole I like the fact that we're talking about the whole puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't remember that we really have talked. We've talked in depth about different departments, mm-hmm. but we've really not gotten into how they all work together for a positive outcome.
Right, and this is one of the organizing things that helps that happen.
And that's a good thing. I see us working, or see you guys working at a really true common goal, which is to help anyone who's in need, but to structure it so that all of the things that could be overlooked won't be, because you have that team focus. Yeah,
right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, and we can't, even as dedicated as we are, our strength is in knowing where the resources are to bring in. I don't speak 9 languages, but I sure know how to get a victim to someone who can help and be a culturally specific and address the needs that I don't even know about,
Well, I want you to kind of step back a little bit, because I know that this system hasn't been in your career, hasn't been in stone this whole time, has it? This is a developing system.
It is, just like anything, it's still developing. Yes, and I guess what I want people to learn is, and Wendy Silva, our sexual assault program manager, is going to join in a little bit and talk about how it came about in Charlotte County and when it came about in Charlotte County. Okay. And that's just it. Even though this is a global problem, all right, each community is focusing and forming these response teams to meet the needs of their community. But that's kind of the long way around,
Well, do you with these response teams, do you guys hold conference calls where conference calls where you're working with other teams to find out what they're doing?
Actually, there's like national meetings on to learn from their mistakes, so to speak. Yes. So the magic in it is when you get it started. Obviously, you have to have confidentiality agreements, memorandums of understanding. You need to have, people need to understand what their role is and what someone else's role is, and so it's not a blame game. I guess I need to be really clear about that, because collaboratives that don't do a good job become a blame game. Well, if the hospital would have done this, if so-and-so would have done this. Well, no, this is to look at how victim A, how Mary did not get what she needed during this trauma. Or better yet, how it did work. What did work? What do we want to make sure that everyone is trained in this manner? That kind of thing. Does that make sense, John?
It does. It makes a lot of sense. And I think people need to, one, feel comfortable with what you guys are doing. And I know that over the last couple of years with having C.A.R.E on, people are more comfortable with conversations now than they ever have been. And I think with COVID, even more so, because people are following this information from month to month. And I think they're absorbing it in all different types of fashions. And that's, I think, critical to what's going on here is we're trying to get information out for people to, one, maybe let their guard down a little bit to get some help.
Yes, yes.
And on the other side of it, feel some relief that they're not going to get beat over the head, that they're going to be handled with kid glove.
Right. And John, I love you dearly, but I got to point it out. Look how much that is part of our culture. You were just making an example, beat over the head, but look how much violence is ingrained in our everyday speech and manner, and so it is no wonder that we are dedicated to providing a different example, like when we teach healthy relationships in schools. I mean, it's huge trying to address this. And C.A.R.E is one of the ways we can bring it to the community level, see what works, see what didn't work, and collaboratively, find the answers, and find the resources to best meet the needs. And the money, not to mention.
Yep. Well, and I'm glad you brought that up, because even when I said that to you, I kind of said it and I thought about it as I was finishing it before you could say anything. And I went, well, that was a bad example of that, because that was kind of abusive. But that is everyday life.
Joy's going to call me on that, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you did, because it kind of makes this a real conversation. Because we all give examples every day, but a lot of times we're not dealing with what you guys deal with when we use terminology. Mm-hmm. And it's, you never think about it until you're in the moment.
Exactly.
And it's funny how you brought it up, and I was already thinking, well, that was a really cold way of going about that. But when you step back, we can laugh about it. All right. And that's, here's the nice thing, is that you're not laughing about it when somebody says that, when you're in with a conversation or teaching, but you also aren't ridiculing them into a situation where you're making them feel like they're going to be badgered either, because you guys are pros at listening.
That is what we do. And as an advocate, of course, I had to call you out on that, because that is what I ask everyone else to do.
Right.
That, sexual assault is not okay. Violence is not okay. For example, look how ingrained in our culture it is that John made an innocent comment. And, so yes, thank you for being gracious about it. We're here talking about SARTs, sexual assault response teams, that have formed over the country, globally, but nationwide. They form individually in communities, and to meet the needs of the community. I am lucky to have Wendy Silva with us today, and I'm going to introduce her to the camera. Come on in.
Awesome.
And we're pretty sure our SART started in about 2009. And like I said, these have to develop individually from the community. So Wendy's here to give us a little expertise on how Charlotte County SART came about. Thank you.
Awesome.
Slide on in, Wendy. We're informal here.
Okay. So take off the mask.
Yes, you can.
How are you doing?
Not too bad. How you doing, John? Good to see you again.
Nice to see you too.
Been extremely busy.
Oh, well, that's a good and bad thing.
Yeah, good and bad. It's like, okay, my numbers are up. Oh crap, there's a lot of crime going on.
Right.
Yes, SART, Sexual Assault Response Team. Our Sexual Assault Response Team was actually formed in 2007. And it was started by C.A.R.E in conjunction with the state attorney's office. And we did our SART based on what's called the MN CASA, which is Minnesota something or other. Anyways, we stole our policies and procedures from them, and then kind of went from there. We have participation from the Office of the Attorney General, of course, because they provide victims' compensation claims and relocation and address anonymity for victims. We also have the state attorney's office, who, of course, prosecutes all cases in Charlotte County that make it that far. We have great participation from the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office Major Crimes Unit, Lieutenant Hack, he's very involved, and from Punta Gorda Police Department. And we have most of our hospitals at least try to make it to one SART meeting per quarter. They're very, very busy people at the hospital. We do have participation from Children's Advocacy Center, from the school board. There's a few people that we'd like to see more participation, like
I mentioned yes.
EMS, and the ambulance drivers and med techs, because they do see this from Pregnancy Care Line, Pregnancy Solutions. So there's always people we'd like to get involved. And the thing about SART, Sexual Assault Response Team, it's not about going, oh, you did your job wrong, you didn't do it right.
Oh, we did this.
What we did is made sure first that we had MOUs, memorandums of understanding between all the participating agencies. And then it was about training everyone to understand what each person's piece is. So I'm not asking a road deputy to gather evidence when that's going to be up to the forensic officer. And I'm not asking a forensic officer to do something that belongs to the detective. And they're not asking advocates to do something that belongs to a nurse. We needed to understand every person's piece of the puzzle so that all those pieces fit together appropriately. And none of us were overlapping or leaving a piece out. The idea was, how do we, as a community, provide the most empathic, compassionate, comprehensive care possible? And so, we come together once a month, 10 months out of the year. We usually skip July and December. And we do a lot of cross training and training of different entities within, like as SART, we go out and we do trauma informed care trainings. SART, up until this year because COVID,
Right.
we usually go out and do a big leggings drive during April, which is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And those leggings go into our hospital response bags. And that hospital response bag is taken then when we go to the hospital, because a lot of times they confiscate a victim's clothing because it has evidence. And so we take in clothing and personal hygiene products in order to be able, the victim doesn't have to leave the hospital in paper scrubs. Our SART team worked very, very closely together to develop what we'll call code teal kits. And there was, back in Sheriff's blog and NBC2, and we made the news because we were pretty cool. We put together a code teal kit, and inside a code teal kit, they're located in every ER here in Charlotte County. And when a victim shows up at the hospital, all the nurse has to do is grab that tote, and every single thing she is going to need to do a complete sexual assault examination is inside that tote. Sterile water, swabs, the actual SAE kit, the extra evidence tape, extra evidence bags, drug and alcohol testing kits. The whole works is inside that kit. And then when it's used, Charlotte County Sheriff's Office replenishes it for them. So it's always there, always available. Bam. And, it's that easy. Just grab the kit and go. That took us a while to do, but we finally got it together and we got these into the hospitals. They also include a binder that shows exactly step by step how to conduct a forensic exam, and laminated picture cards on exactly how to tape up the evidence so that it can't be tampered with, because we don't want to give defense attorneys anything to play with. So we went through all that and we got that together, code teal kits. And then our recent accomplishment as our SART was we had Florida Council Against Sexual Violence send their SANE trainer to Charlotte County to train SANEs. Now, SANE is a sexual assault nurse examiner who has been specifically trained in gathering evidence from a victim. And they can do a lot of things that are just, I hate to say typical nurse, but like a typical nurse cannot do a pelvic exam. A doctor has to do it. But a sexual assault nurse examiner can do that pelvic exam so that we're not waiting on a doctor who's treating 9 emergent cases while a victim is laying here waiting.
Right.
So we brought that to Charlotte County, and we had 19 local nurses trained that are now, they're SANE trained, and now they can conduct sexual assault nurse examiner duties, but they can also take that further and become SANE certified. That's strictly up to the nurses if they want to do that. So we were really excited about that because previous to this training, we had 1 SANE in all of Charlotte County.
Wow, that's a big deal then to go from that to, what'd you say, 18?
19. 19 new nurses trained. So yeah, we had 1. And when she was not on duty, well, as I said, any nurse can do the exam, but then you wait for a doctor to have time to come. And we had victims that were laying 8, 10, 13 hours waiting for the doctor to be freed up to come in and do a pelvic exam.
So I want to stop you for a second because I find it to be interesting that you've taught your energy level is really high on this topic, like off the charts high, and it should be because it's quite an accomplishment across the board. And I want to ask you that from a victim's perspective, and you've got bragging rights because you've got 19 now, but from a victim's perspective, what's changed for that individual now because you have done all these things and gotten all these programs set up?
Well, the goal is, as I said, the most compassionate, empathic, comprehensive care available. SANE nurses are not only trained in, okay, let me swab this, let me do this, but they're trained in that trauma-informed interviewing, and they're trained to ask the right questions in a way that is non-threatening, non-blaming, non-shaming, to get as much information as possible, which then becomes part of that examination. So it's kind of like there's a blend of Psych 101 into the nursing training there. So that helps. That they learn strategies for helping a victim be more at ease and to be able to help them relax and take their time and be able to talk about things in a very non-threatening environment. And a lot of times that SANE is able to get way more information than big burly detective who's really doing his own job, but there's a difference in the way they approach things. And so that's important. Also, as I said, we had people in the past that waited for hours because the doctor had one emergent case after another. And this heart attack over here, or this gunshot wound is way more important than this rape victim.
So the time is probably one of the huge
things.
There you go. That and I'm glad you jumped in there because that's truly everything that you said plays right through this whole transition. But where I was thinking the value was the time frame that a victim because you use the word 13 hours. The word's 13 hours. Sometimes they lay there 13 hours. Well, I don't care who you are. If you lay there for 13 hours, evidence changes over 13 hours. And so if you could get this team in there and the nurse in there to do her thing, one with professionalism and empathy, which most nurses have, for the most part. I'm married to one, I better say that, but it's one of those things where I watch enough shows that you know, your CSIs and things like that, when they talk about these victims, they're, you know, the same people are going in the room and getting all the evidence at the same moment. That's not reality. That's a TV show.
Right.
And so the reality is you guys have had to, one, talk about these things, but then create a situation and get it implemented that made the victim, while in an uncomfortable state, feel more at ease than they ever have before. Would that be fair?
Exactly. I mean, it's hard enough, first off, for a woman to go into the emergency room and claim, you know, I've been raped. And now I've got to go through, and don't get me wrong, a forensic exam is an extremely invasive procedure. I mean, they're sticking things down your throat, up your, and they're examining everything. Okay, so it's pretty. But imagine laying in a hospital bed for 13 hours with your perpetrator's DNA all over you, inside you, and not being able to bath, to eat, to drink, to even go to the bathroom until this exam is done. And I'm thinking to myself, no wonder only 1 out of 5 ever report. You know, if they hear a horror story like that, why would I go?
Well,
right?
and I'm going to ask this because people of like situations kind of flock together, and people have been abused. I want to say tend to hang around people who have been abused.
They do find each other,
and they share these stories, and you know, it's ironic that we're talking about something positive in such a negative atmosphere, because it is very traumatic. As many years as I've worked in ICU, I didn't have the exposure to rape victims. I had massive car injuries or gunshot wounds or anything else like that. You still see at that level, you still see the trauma, not just to the victim, but to the family or friends who knew why they got shot. And I'm not trying to make light of what you guys do, but there are some similarities to that, where the family members, if the family member's there and that person is laying there for 13 hours, the family member, first off, is in hopefully some disbelief that this has even happened again, because it's a first time.
That secondary victim is suffering just as much as the
Exactly. And
here we offer those support services to secondary victims as well, because how do I help my daughter, my sister, my cousin, my girlfriend who was raped? You know, I don't know how to do that. And so that's, you know, when we go in as advocates into the hospital, you know, if there is a family member or a friend there, we include them in the whole process with the victim's permission, of course, because we do want to be there for them. This is the person that they're probably going to go home with, right, who's going to be there to support them when they don't feel like picking up the phone and dialing our 24-hour helpline. I need a shoulder to cry on, not a phone. So those people need to understand too, how do I best help? And so we talk a lot about how to help your friend, because even when we do outreach and we're talking, nobody wants to be the rape victim. Hi, I was raped. No, right. But a lot of times you hear, I got a friend who, and we'll say, well, here's a card you can give to your friend. And it actually says in it how to help your friend. And it's, you know,
and we've talked about that. We have talked about that. And it's, I want to go back to that victim situation for just a second, because a victim family, or victim friend family, should I say, I think the change that you guys have implemented, it changes that room, not just for the victim, where you might have had at that point been dealing with the victim, and yes, a family member that says, well, why can't they get this done? I need to get her mentally back. I need to get him mentally back. I need these things now. That was pressure that you guys felt before, that because you've implemented these procedures, hasn't that tamed down some of, and I don't want to say tamed down in the scope of things, but wouldn't you say it settled the room and the culture of the room so that you could get things grounded much quicker?
You're making a really good point, John, and I'm going to add on to that, in that, yes, the victim is confused why this takes this long. The family's confused why it takes this long. Advocates are there. We're explaining, we're talking. But guess who else is aggravated? It takes this long. Law enforcement, the nurse. So to get the whole team working more efficiently, effectively, knowing the next step is going to, number one, be more effective. Okay. And it's certainly going to engender some more confidence that it's done correctly and that it's not going to take all day. So we don't have a brand new deputy getting trained saying, oh my God, it's a sexual assault case. I'm going to be here all day, and we wonder why they don't want to work with us, So we've had that goodwill improvement has changed by having more things organized, the code teal there, the resources available, an advocate that shows up. I mean, I think that speaks to a lot of different parts of this puzzle. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, and yes, it does, because when I was dealing with trauma victims, we would get the patient settled, we would bring the family member in, and a lot of times I was the one who went out and got the family members, and that same scenario probably plays out with you guys too. The family members aren't necessarily in the room immediately because you're trying to deal with some things. And I don't want to overspeak if I'm wrong, but...
Oh, no, that happens all the time. As long as the exam is not ongoing, we are doing a lot of running back and forth. Tell my friend to wait for me, or tell my friend I'll get a ride, or tell her, please don't leave. Or yes, a lot of that.
and that, I say that because, people think car accidents and gunshot wounds one direction, and they look at rape, I think, through a different lens a lot of times, because I think they get quicker results because they're raped, because of what's on TV. It's on the TV. Yeah, well, it's not, and I think that's a valuable point that you guys have done by taking the C.A.R.E program and really changing the focus from the delay. You've almost made this instant gratification again, because you've taken that block of time and you've really shrunk it down for that assessment to happen in a much quicker time frame, which changes the mental capacity for everyone.
And what she just said is effectively is important, because any ER nurse, and you've worked in the hospital and ICU, and that nurse has got 8-9 patients. She's thinking about all those patients and she's going through her thing. And then, I've got this rape case over here. And when I get started on this kit, because once you start a sexual assault kit, there's no entering or leaving the room. That's it. The room is locked and sealed until all evidence is bagged and tagged. And so, and then here I am, I'm stuck with this patient and I'm trying to do the best I can on this exam while I'm still worried about these other 8 or 9 patients I have out on the ER. Mm-hmm. When you have a SANE on staff, they can pull that SANE, disperse her caseload, and she can give 100%, and he or she gives 100% to that victim. They are solely focused on that victim, on that procedure, on collecting that evidence and making sure that everything, all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed, and defense don't have squat.
And I'm going to say this because of my background. That situation that you're talking about, bringing outside staff in and then giving that soul care, that soul attention, it's similar to when we ran codes. on the floor.
Yeah.
Is the minute you had a code on the floor, that nurse became that patient's nurse solely. Everybody else that was out working the floor took over for patients, and 100% dotting the I's, crossing the T's, double focusing on everything while you had people around you with support. It's the same. It's the same scenario, but you've taken that code and made that code the same thing for a victim now, which is a completely different mindset.
Yeah.
And that was my point. That was my point, is that
Right. We
this
just
whole
got
thing-
up to speed. I mean, we took all this time and all these teams and all these, even to
Yep.
get up to, okay, they deserve the same quality of care,
They are a priority.
you know, and it has to be timely, just like a heart attack. It has to be, you know, effective.
They're not bleeding out, and they're not flatlining, but they are a priority. They have just been through one of the most traumatic events of a lifetime.
and I don't mean to compare the two, but I'm going to ask this because I think I'm right, okay, in asking, and I think I'm right in my assumption, is that there are a lot of victims who go through rape and abuse that the end result might not be a code and you're assessed and maybe something happens on the spot, but a lot of people who are going through abuse end up in suicide. So the two end results are not, they're not drastically different. Is that I just feel like you guys put the importance of the victim in a much greater situation, and I don't know if you use that example that it just felt right for me to say a code situation, because the change of mindset is all we're working on every month on this show.
Well, I like the analogy. I do. Because, I mean, and I don't want to overburden the COVID crisis, whatever, but we are in and have been in a sexual assault crisis for a long time. And when that job is done right at the hospital and there is good evidence, and we're talking about stopping serial rapists, okay? This is not a thing from, Sherlock Holmes. This is happening now. Okay. And the evidence is what is the magic, and the victim's willingness with support to come forward is the only thing that is going to put a stop to some of that.
And as Joy said, it is serial rapists. I mean, we'll get victims coming in and it's the same description of the same guy. And so it's how, but okay, let's think about this now. Previous to us having these sayings, previous to Code Teal, previous to C.A.R.E, somebody, as I said, may lay in that bed for 13 hours. Now, as you said, people congregate together, likes attract. So if I heard that my girlfriend was raped, it took 13 hours in the hospital to get a sex exam. When I experience that, how quick am I to go to the hospital? We're shifting that culture now, that when that victim goes into the hospital and they're treated with care and compassion and empathy and speed, they are made a priority. They have a nurse assigned to them within the first few minutes of getting there. And I mean, yeah, the kit is lengthy. The actual exam itself takes about 3 hours, but that's 3 hours. That person is interacting with you and working with you, and it goes a whole lot faster than 13 hours laying there waiting.
And the evidence is better. And
so when I have that experience and I'm like telling my girlfriend, hey, it wasn't bad. She was very so empathic. Nice. She was so nice to me. She believed, she never once doubted me or questioned me. And it was over. You're going to have the next victim say, yeah, I want to go. And I increase reporting.
I agree. And I kind of get excited about this topic when you guys talk about these things, because it's in general, we all want to have one thing at the end of the day when we're done with this show, is that we want people's point of view to be infected one way or the other.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And no pun intended with COVID. You know, we've been talking about a change of mindset for 2 years on this topic on this show, with
Right.
different guests throughout the time. And the fact that, you know, SARS is there, SARS is working, and fine tuning the process. To me, when you take a victim and you put them in that situation, and you guys clarify this, on my assessment right now, is that I look at it as the victim comes into the room, the victim has people assigned, possibly a nurse on staff right there, or on site right there, doing their thing. That exam might be 3 hours, but the culture inside that room is instantly changed from a culture of exam for 3 hours to a completely different mindset for the victim and those around them. For the fact that that exam is now being handled in a much more strategic manner.
Correct.
Because it's more level. You're not going at it by push. Let's get the exam done. You're still taking your steps through that exam measured. Is that correct?
Yes, very much so. If you see the binder that these poor, I mean, like, after a 40-hour sane training, it's a miracle they aren't have broken back, because this binder is like this. I mean, it's huge with, you know, and they're trained step by step. And like I said, it's very, there's a lot more in how discussing with the victim what happened. Is it okay if I touch you here? This is what I'm going to do next. Are you okay with that? Now we're going to do this part, you know, and explaining it step by step. And I'll tell you, and I've been in all the hospitals. I've responded to rape calls many times. And there is a huge difference between a sane trained nurse and your typical ER nurse. Because your typical ER nurse, not that they don't care, but they got a lot on their plate and they're moving in 100 directions at once. Right. When that sane comes in, this is what she is focused on. And so she's not stressing about, wait a minute, did I give so-and-so his heart pill? Did I get this prescription sent upstairs fast? Did I do it? No, she's focused right here, right on this victim.
So and I'm going to ask this question because it's important on both aspects. That's okay. Sorry. Listen, we're good. We're good with this because we're all learning that COVID has created not only some situations that we have to deal with every day, but these phone calls that ring, that just tells everybody that you're working, you're at work, people are answering that line. And in case they didn't realize,
together, John. Remember, folks, you can type in questions now, which is something we had wanted for a long time, and you know, easier said than done type of thing. With John being 3 different hats, so we have that option now, and we will be here every month. This is a confidential, free service that we offer here at C.A.R.E, and I am serious that we want to answer the questions that you have about how you can help, what can be done, what is missing, because we can't know it all. We meet the victims, we help the victims, we address what we can, what comes to us, but we also know there's stuff out there that never gets to us. And we want those vulnerable people to find a way to find help. And you might be that person.
Yeah, I'm going to take it one step further, and I'm going to tell anybody that's been through this, that's been at C.A.R.E, and you feel like chiming in and telling about your experience. feel free to do that, because I think if you have been a victim and you've gone through CARE, or you've been a victim and you've gone through any sort of CARE program out there, if your voice needs to be heard, it's probably to the same group of people that you need to be talking to, because you're similar. So don't be afraid in this environment.
Good or bad feedback, good or bad.
Good or bad.
Sometimes that's how we need to learn and grow, is by getting negative feedback as well as the good. I mean, I know my advocates are great. I love them. But I also know sometimes we don't do the best job we should. And we need to hear when we've messed up, so that we know this is an area we need to tighten up on. This is an area we need to do better on.
Which, again, back to the topic of C.A.R.E. It's a, what do you call that? A flashlight interface, or a microscope over. Yeah. But it's someone who knows what they're talking about, and who was in the equation to be able to say, but wouldn't this work better? Or did we miss this step? You know, and it does take different viewpoints to find those gaps, to find what would have made a heck of a lot more sense, more effective time use, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah.
C.A.R.E would have never been developed if you didn't have the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Exactly.
To change what you were doing. And I think that's what excites me about this for you guys, is, and why I love the excitement of both of you, is that you're addressing the situation that you faced more than not. Because I very rarely do you have victims go in and get instant care anywhere in the United States, across the board. So you've taken something and you've put eyes on the ground. You've fixed the problem, and you fixed it with professional input.
We haven't fixed it until sexual assault stops.
Well, no, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the victim, the C.A.R.E program, as far as in the room. And you and I, we've talked about this before, is that we know for a fact that we wish that sexual abuse and rape would go away. I just don't know that we're living in that right world, that everything's going to be perfect and go away. But if we can minimize it and educate and get the information out and be preventative, that's a completely different mindset than what we were doing 20 years ago. Go ahead.
We really do. I mean, it's really a cultural shift in order to stop rape and sexual assault and domestic violence. It's really got to be a whole cultural shift. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. But, you know, I've said over and over again, my goal is to work myself out of a job, right? So that's what we do. We go into the schools now. We go into, the drug and alcohol rehab for adolescents, and we teach about healthy boundaries, healthy relationships. We're going into the middle schools, and we're teaching coaching men into boys, or coaching boys into men, and girls circle. And we have Lauren Book, and she's a she's a representative, I believe, here. But she developed a curriculum called Lauren's Kids to stop abuse from happening. And we now have that whole curriculum from pre-K all the way through high school. So, yeah, I mean, no, we're not going to stop it overnight. And I guarantee that. My goal, I work on both ends. Okay, so I'm down here, and I'm really working with my advocates to get into the schools and get into the after school programs and get into wherever we can to try to teach prevention, while we're at the opposite end doing intervention and trying to make sure that any victim gets the best intervention they can get in Charlotte County. So it's a very broad spectrum of things that we do here. And sometimes it gets you a little like spinning in circles. But the bottom line is, none of us here would do what we do if we didn't love what we do. And that is serving a victim.
Yep.
And John, I would tell you, I couldn't do this job if I wasn't hopeful that we're making inroads. You
Well,
know,
I think every day you're making inroads, and I think that being able to have the conversations that we're
Mhm.
having, hopefully, are making inroads with others.
and
It's
I want to give you credit because I don't think we would have been on the radio or Facebook even 15 years ago having this candid of a conversation. So that is to your credit, your listeners' credit, the community radio station saying, this is important. We're putting it on the schedule.
well, and I hate to end with kudos on both sides, but I
Hey,
can't believe that we've talked for 50 minutes now,
oh
and
dear.
our time is within 60 seconds of being off the air.
Okay.
And we did it again. So give the phone number for the hotline. It's scrolling on Facebook, so you can always go to Real Talk 97.5 FM and look on Facebook. But go ahead and give the number.
Sure. Okay. For care for sexual assault, it's 941-637-0404. For domestic violence, it's 941-639-6000. You can go to carefl.org and you can chat, and there's texting available, and we're available on Facebook. You can message us. We are available. We're on Instagram at Charlotte County Care. We are here. We are available 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. We are here.
Free, confidential,
100.
and here for you.
Yep.
All right. Awesome. You guys are great. I look forward to next month. Let's get some flyers up. We'll have some different conversations. Anything you guys want to do, just send it on over, email it over. We'll get it up and we'll have it ready to go. And we'll have a great show again.
And I loved your link into our website data. Great. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Thanks
you guys have a great day. We'll talk to you soon. We'll see you on Friday.
Talking to you. Happy holidays.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye now.
Bye now.